Hey there, this is Women on the Brink. I'm your host, Chris Jeffrey, a registered acupuncturist and wellness advisor with a passion for helping women live happier and more balanced lives. When I'm away from work, I'm usually outside in nature, either walking the seawall or I'm hiking in the mountains. And like many of you, my life has been filled with moments of hardship, some that I thought I couldn't overcome and really left me questioning my own strength. But through these challenges, I discovered resilience, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. So I'm here to share not just my journey, but the lessons I've learned, and to remind you that no matter what obstacles come your way, there's always a path forward. So, welcome back to Women on the Brink. Today, we're tackling an issue that affects everyone, but often plays out very differently depending on your gender, and that is financial health. From pay gaps and caregiving responsibilities to societal expectations and financial literacy, men and women often experience different financial realities. A little tidbit that I discovered is that we women tend to be savers and are more risk adverse compared to men. And these differences can shape not just our bank accounts, but also our confidence, our stress levels, and our long term security. So, in this episode, we'll explore solutions for financial health for women at different stages of their life. So, whether you're just getting acquainted with a financial portfolio, or you're trying to build wealth, or you're looking for ways to continue to earn from different income streams later in life, this conversation will leave you with new insights and actionable tips. And here to help us navigate this process is Kate Phillips, the creator of programs such as the Wealth School for Women and Rewrite My Money Story. She fuses personal growth with wealth education to create financial transformation. And Kate draws from lessons learned from her own past financial challenges, including a great recession home foreclosure while caregiving for her father, to helping clients who have overcome their own financial challenges. Kate is a best-selling financial author, coach, and host of the Total Wealth Show on YouTube. Kate, we're super happy to have you here on Women on the Brink today. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Love your show, the whole concept of women on the brink.
Thank you, Kate. And I just want to fill the listeners in on how Kate and I met. Kate was actually the very first coach I ever engaged with, and that was during my divorce, probably some 15 years ago. And so Kate and I have remained in touch since then.
I love that we have. I don't know that I probably knew back then that I was your first coach, but I'm honored.
So, Kate, what advice would you give all women in general, like just general advice when it comes to our financial health?
Yes, actually, I'm going to start with mindset because the place to start, even if we're talking about money, is how do you think and feel about money? Because everything is going to flow downstream from how we think and feel about money. And there is the saying that, you don't want to love your money. The love of money is the root of all evil. But I have a theory that a lot of women don't love their money enough. That if we talked about money and as if it was a person, we would be saying things like, I just don't know that I can count on money, or where have you been? And and we are saying bad things about money behind its back rather than nurturing a really positive relationship with money where money ceases to be the obstacle that stands between us and our dreams. And oh my gosh, if we just didn't have to deal with money, life would be so grand. But we do deal with money, and I believe money can be part of our transformational growth that we go through in life. Why are we here? We're here to grow. We're here to learn. Why wouldn't money be a part of that? And so to embrace money as a partner in our own growth and learning and evolution.
Yeah, I love that actually, because There is, just like with everything in the world, there is an energy to money. So what do we attach to it? Is it fear? Is it love? I mean, what is that relationship all about? I think that is really, really important. So anything else that you would suggest to all women when it comes to financial health?
Yes, I know we're going to talk about, some different things to do at different stages of life, but at any stage of life, if we can avoid high interest debt, credit card debt especially, or anything like that, that would be my number one thing. Because when you're younger and you have that debt, it's going to stop you from investing. If you're older and you have that debt, I see people sometimes get trapped on this treadmill of minimum payments where they're not able to dig out. And if you find yourself in that situation, there are solutions. And, if you were carrying, say, $10,000 of credit card debt, and certainly people can carry a lot more than that, and the average interest rate is 24% these days. That's $2,400 a year if you are on that treadmill. $200 a month, just, burn it up. You might as well light it on fire. And so we want to do whatever we can to avoid high interest debt.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, when you put it in those terms, $200 a month becomes $2,400 a year. Somebody could go on a pretty nice vacation for that
Yes, and
with
what I
that.
see sometimes is people are trying to pay off their credit cards for things that they purchased or things that they did 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago when we are carrying those balances. So we want to just nip that in the bud.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's our relationship with money, pay off the high interest debt. Is there anything else that we should be looking at?
We always want to be just aware of what is happening with our money. So tracking it. I'm actually part of a money dates, like an accountability group where we get together on Mondays and we have our money date with our money. It can also be committing to a lifetime of learning about money. It is such an important thing. It is one of our primary relationships. It's not the most important thing in the world, but it touches everything that is. Money's going to impact, at least in the United States here, it definitely impacts your healthcare. It's going to impact time, and it has an impact on how you live, your lifestyle, your relationships, where or if or how long we vacation or travel. So it touches so many things in our life. And yet we have this kind of crazy broken system where we meet with a quote unquote financial advisor. And I say quote unquote because there's no actually like official legal definition usually when we're meeting with somebody who we think of as our financial advisor. It is typically a mutual fund salesperson or a salesperson for a financial services organization or corporation. And they can only talk about the things that they sell. So we think we're getting advice, but we're actually getting a sales pitch. And the way to empower ourselves is to be lifelong learners about money.
And I think you mentioned to me too, shouldn't we all have an emergency fund just in case something goes wrong?
Absolutely. Yes. That is for women of every age. We want to be saving before we invest. When we sign up for our first job, we usually have an opportunity. In the US, it's a 401k, and in Canada, what is it that you have there? That's the equivalent.
Yeah, the RRSP.
Got it. So we are
Mhm.
immediately taught to start investing. And
Mhm.
then when people don't have an emergency fund and then the car breaks down, the dog, needs to go to the vet and it's expensive and people have to go in and liquidate their retirement account to do that. And we're usually paying penalties and fees and taxes in the process. Of course, when are you most likely to need money? It's going to be perhaps when the economy isn't doing so well. And then maybe those stocks are now down. So many people were liquidating money from their 401ks during the Great Recession when the stocks had crashed. And so maybe people after the fees and the taxes and the market crash, they put in $10,000, but they're getting 4,000 out. That's not a good deal. So we always want to have some money to get through those smaller emergencies.
Exactly. Good point. So, I mean, let's break it down. I mean, as a young woman, let's say you've just come out of college and you're just embarking on a career. What specific advice would you give to these younger women?
Yes, we know that investing, the compounding effect of investing is so powerful over time. And there's a high cost to waiting to invest. You do need to have that emergency fund, but then you want to start investing, even if it's just small amounts of money, $100 a month. And maybe it's much more than that. When women can start investing in their 20s, in their 30s, it's going to make such a huge difference later on. That money, those investments have time to compound. I separate savings from investing. And I know that you mentioned at the top that women are more likely to save rather than invest. And one of the big reasons, there's a huge wealth gap between men and women. It's much, much wider than the wage gap. Everybody talks about the wage gap. I'm like, forget about, well, not forget about it, but really the wage gap is so much bigger. And that is the difference with what women end up in their portfolio. What is the net worth that they end up with? And the research is a little bit all over the map on this. I've seen numbers as low as 32 cents per dollar, maybe as much as 60 some cents per dollar. But if we just said 50 cents on the dollar, I'm just going to throw all the numbers in a blender and call it 50%. That's a huge, huge gap. And one of the causes for that gap is women who are afraid to invest. And so whatever the bank is paying is what they are earning. But it is really, and you asked if it's the stock market. I would say that's the easiest way to start investing when you just have little bits of money that you can put in. You don't have a lump sum. Usually people's first investment is not going to be a rental house or not going to be, partnership in a business. So there's many, many different ways to invest. And actually it could be something like, buying a little tenth of an ounce of gold every month. I mean, that could actually be a fun way to invest. But I would say that the stock market and index funds are going to be an easy way to get started. It can be automated. We can set up, it could be $50 a month, could be $500 a month. It could be variable according to people who
Whatever you can
fund.
afford.
Yeah, rise and fall. So that's an easy way to start.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. And then, moving on in life, I mean, we've got kids. Some people will have a house, maybe some people won't. What advice then would you give to women sort of through their 30s, 40s, and into their 50s?
Yes. I am such a fan of home ownership for women. And an interesting statistic is that single women, at least here in the US, I don't know for sure if this applies to Canada. Single women in the US are more likely to own their own home than men. So there are ways in which women are really thriving. We have most of the college degrees, most of the advanced degrees now are being earned by women. We're more likely to own our own home. But what I see when I work with women of all ages is when women get into their elderly years or their older years, if they are still renting, because of inflation, those rents just tend to go up, 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 up. And then there's a loss of control where if you can't control your own home, I remember my stepmother, she had to get creative with housing later in her life, and she had a really great solution for a while, which was becoming a nanny for a wealthy family who had an in-home apartment. That was a great solution. But then later she got her own apartment, and she was of modest means, I would say. And, because of inflation and the landlord decided to renovate and really jack up the prices, she lived in Seattle at the time. She had basically moved out of Seattle. She got priced out of Seattle. Now she landed in a great place, but I've seen other women that are struggling with finding, where to live, and it's such a basic need that I would say I would recommend to women. You might not have the capacity in your 20s to buy something, but as you're saving, as you're investing, maybe you use some of that money on a down payment. Maybe we get creative. Maybe it's a tiny home. Maybe we buy a home with one or two friends. Maybe we buy a duplex. I helped coach. There was a woman that I worked with, and she was one of my first, workshop students. Love your money, love yourself. And then she recommended that her daughter come and take the class. And her daughter, you know how it is when your mother tells you something's going to be good for you. Yeah. And her daughter came in like physically resistant, arms crossed. I didn't know her, and she was telling me how she didn't earn any money and worked for a nonprofit, and she had just gone through a divorce, and her credit was trashed because her ex-husband had let their home that they had bought together go into foreclosure. So she just thought, I'm never going to buy a house. And well, we changed her thoughts. Again, everything comes from mindset. And 3.5 months later, when that course ended, she was in escrow on a home, and she didn't do it the typical way. She bought it with her mom. They partnered together. It was like mom had the good credit and the daughter, had something that she could contribute. She also got a raise and got her dream job during that, for the same organization, but she got her dream job that she still works today. I'm going to say it's 15, if not 16, 17 years later, she still works that dream job. So anything can happen when we open ourselves up to the possibility and we focus. And so solving your future housing, and it can be anything from someday I'm going to pay off this mortgage and I'm not going to have the mortgage payment anymore. It could be being creative and just finding a way that that you are not, we don't want to be in that position where housing's being kind of held over our head is the big stressor in life where we don't have control.
I remember in a previous conversation, you brought up house hacking. Can you tell us what house hacking is?
Oh, yeah. House hacking is a term for perhaps you find, let's say, a triplex for sale, and you can buy that triplex, and when it's not an apartment building, when it's not like a big apartment building, usually the mortgages can be, you can get like that good rate, like a single family interest rate on your mortgage. And then you can use the incomes of your tenants to help you qualify. And so if it's a triplex and you've got two renters, those two renters are going to contribute towards, those two renters might end up paying 80% of that mortgage. And so all of a sudden your mortgage costs are being offset. And then over time, as rents raise, people who do house hacking find that they are living for free. I have a friend who did house hacking, we could call it that, in her own home, where she got a construction loan. She put in an accessory dwelling unit, and it might have been later added on a like a master suite upstairs with an office, and now she's got multiple renters and her housing costs are completely covered. She also owns an asset. Even though the mortgage is bigger on it now, she also owns a more valuable asset.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think we don't call it house hacking in Vancouver, but that is exactly how we're living here because we call it mortgage helpers, and it's very, very common in this city. We don't have a lot of housing right now. People are converting their basements into suites.
I love that. I've never heard that term and I absolutely love it. Mortgage helpers.
Yeah, yeah, it's very common here. So what about with these women who are sort of middle age? Are we still investing then?
Yes, absolutely. Investing. is something that we ought to be doing over the course of our lifetime. Now, I would say I believe it's so important to get the housing problem solved that if that means that maybe for 3 years somebody stops, contributing to their retirement account, I would say that would be worth it if that is what is necessary. But we do want to keep investing. It is a long-term thing. As we grow older and as we perhaps have more capacity, we want to start diversifying. We don't want everything in the stock market. We don't want everything in the same kind of asset. And so depending on who you are, and there can be a lot of different factors. It may be gold and silver, it may be adding on some Bitcoin for people who have the capacity to go on a roller coaster ride occasionally without freaking out. It may be annuities for people who are like, nah, I don't want to wake up and find out that 20% of an investment is gone, which can happen with Bitcoin, with cryptocurrency. So maybe it's annuities. Maybe it's, I know in Canada, something that both of our countries share is that you can get a whole life insurance policy with cash value, and there are some advantages to that as well. And then sometimes people, when they build up a big cash value account, you can use your cash value, borrow against it as a down payment on a home or a rental home. Perhaps maybe you've already got your own home, but you're ready to do some real estate investing.
So really diversify our investments then, right? So
Yes.
some
Yes.
in stocks, maybe some in if if you've already, let's say you've got your own home, so maybe other assets, would you say?
Real estate is such a good one. I'm such a fan of real estate, but there are different ways to do it. And if you want actual ownership of the property, which is one of the beauties about it, it's one of the most inflation resistant assets. Stocks can be as well, and certainly cryptocurrency can be inflation resistant, as opposed to think about something like a bank certificate of deposit. You're going to be just earning the same amount. If your bank CD, if your treasury bond, is at a certain percentage point, that is what you're going to be earning. And it's going to be paying off the interest, but it's not going to be growing. With a home, you've got at least the capability, not a guarantee, but you've got the capability that over time, the value is going to increase. You're going to be paying down your mortgage, your equity is going to increase. The rents if you are renting it out, the rents will over time increase. And so a home is a really I do love real estate investing, but you've got to do it in a way that works for you. Not everybody wants to be a landlord. Some people hire property managers. Some people, do it in other ways that are just maybe have a partner and the partner deals, with the tenants. So there's different ways that we can do that. But definitely diversifying is so important. The most popular investment right now in the US, and I hate it, it's something called life cycle funds. It's a mutual fund that has kind of a target date of when you are retiring. So it might be like the name of the company, and it's going to be your, 2050 fund. And these funds, I call them financial sausage. They are batching up. We're going to put a bunch of mutual funds in it and maybe some bonds and maybe some toxic assets that nobody really wants to buy, but because it's sausage, we can stuff some things in the sausage that, some some junk bonds or something that nobody else really wants. And it's all batched together. So think about that. Maybe you have a year that stocks do really well, but bonds go nowhere. If we have those things separately, we could sell off some stocks and maybe buy a different asset that didn't do very well the last couple of years. And so we're able to manage those asset classes differently versus just having everything in a big fat sausage. And then when the market crashes, you just get the line, oh, well, What you need to do is just stay invested for the long term because it will bounce back. And I think that's honestly just lazy management. If somebody's earning a commission for keeping you in financial sausage, that's, you're not getting your money's worth.
So, I mean, what advice would you give to older women in today's world? I mean, I think there's more and more people who are retiring and coming out of retirement to work for different reasons. It's not just a financial reason. Some people are choosing to stay in their careers longer. What specific advice would you have for these older women?
Yes, there are people. Unretirement is now an official trend for sure. And you're right, it's not always because of finances. And finances do play a large impact in that. Even people who feel that they're set up pretty well for retirement, you never know what's going to happen with your health or with emergencies or with the economy. So sometimes people want to keep working. Sometimes people have to keep working. Sometimes people retire and they discover after 6 months of relaxation and bliss that they are bored out of their minds and they don't have a reason to get up in the morning. And I would say especially men, but any woman who's been like very career oriented, goal oriented, it's hard to sometimes like, oh, now I'm going to watch the grass grow and pet the cat and go for more, more walks. And because we get energized by challenges in our lives and by leading a project or by fulfilling on something. And we also, people find that they sometimes retire and they feel isolated. And there's also a growing body of evidence that shows the longer we work, the longer we stay active and keep our minds active, the better it is for us. I'm sure you have something to say about that as a healthcare practitioner about when people stay active. I'm sure you see the huge difference that makes.
Absolutely. And I remember asking you, what is the number one activity for people who have gone into retirement? And I was shocked because you said it was
Yes.
watching television.
Watching television for retirees 70 and over. It's not only the number one pastime, the number one activity, it surpasses all hobbies and pastimes together, added together. So when you think about it, like really, is that is that what are we retiring to if we are retiring to watch TV? It's really time to rethink, even if it means doing volunteer work because, maybe we don't want to work full time anymore. We don't need to work full time anymore. Sometimes people can take on part time work, seasonal work. My brother works a seasonal job that he really enjoys, and he'll retire in the next few years. But he said, I'm going to keep doing that seasonal job for as long as I can. There was an antique store. There still is an antique store here in my town, in little town in Washington State. And the first time I went into that antique store, I met the manager, this lovely, lovely older woman. And you know how when an elderly person, like they're really proud of their age and they've got to sneak it into the conversation. And she did. She was like 89 years old at the time, which I never would have guessed. I would have said, earlier mid 70s. She was just, beautifully dressed, very sharp in every way. Turns out her daughter, who was probably in her, 60ish, was in the store working with her that day. So her daughter worked there part time. Her name was Pat, and she worked into her young 90s, and she only worked 3 days per week. She had 4 days off per week. She went and managed the antique store 3 days per week. Who better to manage an antique store than somebody who has lived through some of those eras? And she loved it. We get tourists through the town. She gets to keep up with her friends and family working at the store. I mean, sitting at home watching television is not better.
Don't you have an acronym for this, like financial independence?
There is an acronym called FIRE that usually means something else. FIRE generally means in the financial world, financial independence, retire early. And lots of people are working towards FIRE, and they are sometimes working extra jobs and super scrimping and saving. Sometimes there's a lot of tech people that do the FIRE program. They're investing typically in stocks and in real estate. And their goal is to no longer have to work anymore, maybe by the age of 50 or whatever age they are aiming at. And I think we've got to question this entire idea that work is bad and our lives will be better when we no longer have to do it. Whether that is taking on a business, doing something part time, seasonal work, it may be doing coaching, consulting, writing books, doing a YouTube channel, doing a podcast. It may mean working a job. And I heard from somebody kind of a new acronym for FIRE, which was Financial Independence Recreational Employment. And I found this stream on Reddit where retirees who were still working, who had gone back into work, some of them were talking about their recreational employment. And like engineers who they're now working at a bookstore, or, somebody who's, they're working at an espresso stand because they're done with HR, and just like doing something that they're working with people and they're enjoying it.
So many positives, I feel.
Absolutely. And whether it's learning a new skill or using the skills that you had in your full-time career and now you're pivoting into something else, I just think it's time to question the assumptions that we've been fed. And I think that the assumptions are being fed to us by a financial corporations. That how do they make their money? They want us to stay focused on net worth. They want us to focus on building up the largest portfolio possible in your brokerage account or in your retirement account, because that's how they make their money. They're going to be making their 1.5% or however much they are charging every year off of your net worth. They are creating cash flow for themselves. We don't live on net worth. We live on cash flow. Investments are one way. They're a absolutely proven, reliable way to create cash flow, but they're not the only way to create cash flow. I have a friend who was financially wiped out at 40, also in the not so great recession, as I like to call it. My friend Lisa and her ex-husband, they owned a contracting company, and they were put out of business in the Great Recession. And she started over from scratch, and then the marriage crumbled. She was, single mom with 3 kids. And literally, they went through foreclosure and repossession and, every possible thing that you could go through. And at 40, she started working for a network marketing company, Isogenics. You're probably familiar. It's been around. And oh gosh, she's been doing that for maybe 16, 17 years. And she has earned more than $2 million in that company. She's had a steady 6-figure income for more than well over 10 years now, after a few years of really kind of building it up from a very small, modest amount. She had a real growth year, and she's been at 6 figures ever since. She travels a lot. She's got a lot of time freedom. She loves what she does. So, there's always something. And do you know who the top income earner in Isogenics is? His name is Jimmy Smith. I just love his story. He was a butcher. He had to retire early because of a back injury. He fell in love with network marketing, went and lost a bunch of money in some companies, a company that went under, and, started to eventually learn some skills. And he started with Isogenics at age 74 and became the number 1 income earner in that company.
Love that.
Isn't it incredible? He's in his
Great.
90s now. I went searching YouTube recently for a recent interview with him, and saw one from, a year or 2 ago. You would never guess he was in his 90s, just never in a million years. And he loves what he does, and he got his whole family involved. So now there's generational legacies, and that can be done with a lot of different businesses. We can include our kids in our real estate projects and other kinds of projects that we are doing. So yeah, I'm all about questioning the assumption that fully retiring and never having to work again is necessarily the answer to the happiest life possible.
Yeah, yeah, here, here. I'm all about that as well. So, Kate, if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying for women is that we really need to establish what our relationship is with money. That's kind of the first thing. And the second
Absolutely.
thing is we should always pay off our high interest debt. And then the third thing is start making investments. Even if they're small investments, we should be diversifying our investments once we're, established in life. Always have an emergency fund. And then, we can start looking at other ways to have different income streams so that we're not just relying on one thing, should that one thing bottom out or disappear or whatever the case may be.
I agree. We can create multiple streams of income, maybe not all at once, but one at a time sometimes works better. But when you've got one income stream going, look at how you can add another one. Of course, as our money grows, we can be creating income streams from our money as well as from efforts that we have. We can also create passive, I like to call it really semi-passive income, because income is rarely completely passive. It can be. I mean, if you buy an annuity, I mean, that's as passive as it can possibly get. um, but there are other ways. I wrote a book a few years ago with Kim Butler. It's on Amazon. It's called Perpetual Wealth. It's about generational wealth. Kim Butler is a life insurance expert, and I did all kinds of research around other things like, how is wealth built in a family? How and why does it get lost generationally? And so we put together this book on generational wealth, and I receive quarterly, years later, I still receive quarterly royalties from that. I want to write more books. And the next books I write, I'm not splitting the royalties with Kim, as much as I love Kim, but they will be my books. And Kim has quite a few books, and I helped her on a lot of the books through maybe editing or different promotion, different ways. And I mean, I don't know what she's earning these days on her books, but those books, she's got like 7, 8 books on Amazon right now. And I'll bet that that's a mortgage payment or more, for her. And work that's done, she typically hired co-writers or ghostwriters to do most of the heavy lifting on the writing for her, but they are all earning her not only income stream through Amazon, that's kind of the small income stream. The bigger income stream is that they are helping to continue to bring her customers and clients.
I think that this is a very common trend as well, because we're sure seeing that as well with celebrities where, their main job is to be an actor, but they're buying sports teams and they're buying breweries and vineyards, and they're really diversifying their investments as well.
Absolutely. I remember hearing about Ryan Reynolds, his business pursuits. He's like a smart, savvy guy, very diversified, so I love, he is definitely a role model. And I'm sure he's got some capacity to be able to do these investments, but he's growing his capacity. If he wants to retire from acting, he's got a whole lot of other things going on.
Absolutely. So, going forward, if you could give women one tip that would change the way they look at money or that would help to alleviate some of their financial stress, do you have any advice on that?
Yes. The first tip is start with where you are, work on that mindset. And there is, I've done thinking and writing around financial stress. And one of the big ahas that I had was that there's really two components to financial stress. one of them is something that you can help clients with because it has to do with managing stress. We think of financial stress as like, oh, I don't have enough money to pay the bills. But what I learned when I started coaching is that I had millionaires coming to me because they were so stressed about their money. This was back in the Great Recession. And if you have $4 million that shrinks to $2 million, like that is stressful. You just lost $2 million. And so we might be even fine financially, but we want to work on both the money piece and the mindset piece. And we want to work on our stress level. And that involves managing our health, managing our mindset, moving our bodies. When people get stressed about money, they tend to start doing the things they do when they get stressed. Maybe that's an extra glass of wine, an extra cookie or two, some extra caffeine, not getting out to move their bodies. And then that stress compounds, and we end up with this, it's kind of the downward spiral. And so if you find yourself in what feels like a financially stressful situation, like break it down. What can I do on the financial end to solve this problem? If it is indeed a problem, sometimes it may even be in our perception. What can I do to support myself as I'm going through this problem so that I am empowering myself while I'm solving a financial issue? Maybe you need to find a new job or earn more money, whatever that is. We don't want to have it be so significant. When I was going through my foreclosure, you would not think of a foreclosure as being particularly empowering, but there were empowering things about it. I was, as I mentioned, this was back in the Great Recession. I was caregiving my father. I was a single mom. I was battling my own health crisis while I was managing my father's health crisis. Then there was a summer that my daughter broke her foot, and all three of us had health crises going on, and property values had plummeted. My tenants were having a hard time paying rent, so I was literally playing eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Which mortgage shall I pay this month? Got myself into all kinds of trouble there, but there was. I learned that I could reclaim my own personal power in spite of the circumstances. And not only could I, but I had to. I had, for my own sanity and well being, I had to focus on gratitude and taking the long walks and taking care of myself. When I actually lost the house, was unable to stop the foreclosure, I had to go find a new rental. So I had to convince a landlord that I was going to be the best tenant ever. I had no paycheck stubs. I was self employed. I had horrible crap credit because I had just been through a foreclosure, and I had no landlord references because I had been a homeowner for 14 years. So I had to believe in myself at this really deep level and go and convince another human to believe in me. And I did. We landed in the most amazing rental home for the next 7, 8 years. It was bigger than the home we had just lost. It was closer to my daughter's school. It was laid out much better for my father. It was just absolutely wonderful. And when I finally left the home and bought my next home, my landlord came in and she was so delighted. She said, "I can't even believe you've lived here for the last 7 or 8 years." She said, it looks like when we rented it to you." I don't know that I could say the same thing about the yard. Yard work is not my thing, but
Wow, what a great story on financial resilience. You really overcame some huge obstacles.
yeah, it was. So there's always a powerful decision that we can make, and we want to empower ourselves. We also, as I mentioned, we want to be lifelong learners about money. We want to learn from money from someone who isn't selling us, but we want to be learning about money from someone who's not selling us something. I'm relaunching my Wealth School for Women, which that's one of my main motivations for doing that. is just I love seeing the lights turn on when people understand like how this asset works, or, the pros and the cons and the risks. And maybe that sounds boring to some people, but it's not. When women are able to take back their power and feel that they know what they are invested in and why, that's a powerful thing, rather than just having somebody, the man in the suit recommend what you're going to do and you're not really sure why you're buying it. I discovered that one of the main reasons certain mutual funds get recommended sometimes perhaps for your retirement account, is because the person recommending it is going to get a big bonus. And if they can sell a certain amount of that fund, they get to go on a free trip to Paris. That's not how we want to be making our financial decisions.
Well, I think that financial stress is probably one of the biggest forms of stress in most people's lives, right? And I think you brought up a lot of great tips and a lot of stuff for women to think about, especially at different phases of life. And Kate has a gift for you, listeners. It's a 22-page guide that you can download called Breakthrough to Abundance: 4 Reasons You're Stressing Over Money and How to Break the Cycle Forever. So you can go to www.kates, Kate with a K, so KATES, gift, GIFT, .gr8, the number 8.com to receive the gift. And I will definitely put that in the show notes. So, Kate, what's the best way for people to find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, if somebody wants to contact me directly, I would say send me an email, Kate with a K at totalwealthcoaching.com. And I'm active on Facebook, facebook.com/the Kate Phillips, except no substitutes. I'm also at Instagram.com. I've actually got two accounts there, totalwealth.kate and totalwealth.coach. One of them you get to see my personal life as well as some of my financial stuff, and the coach, totalwealth.coach, is more dedicated to just the finances. Oh, and I am on YouTube as well. The Total Wealth Show on YouTube. You'll see a brunette woman with glasses if you've landed on my channel.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Women on the Brink today, Kate. I think we've all learned a lot. And as I said, I think we've got a lot of takeaways here to think about. As we wrap up this episode, I think it's really clear that financial health for women evolves significantly across the different stages of life. So from the early years of establishing careers and navigating, wage gaps, to balancing the costs of caregiving and planning for retirement. Each stage presents, unique challenges and opportunities, really. But what stands out is the incredible resilience and adaptability women bring to their financial journeys. So, by fostering financial literacy, advocating for pay equity, and embracing tools and resources that promote financial independence, women can really take charge of their financial futures at any stage of their life. Kate, thank you so much for being a guest on Women on the Brink today. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Okay. And remember, financial health isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about empowerment, security, and building a life aligned with your values and goals. So whether you're just starting out, reinventing yourself mid-career, or preparing for retirement, it's never too early or too late to take that step. Thanks for joining. And I want you to know that this isn't just a podcast. This is a movement. So share this information with your friends and let's go, ladies.